Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to once again have a look at the Datamines. We last time had a look at some of the economy stuff. There is a bunch more economy things specifically pertaining to certain vehicles and their modification changes. If you want to check them out, I've left the links to all the Datamines in the description, so you can have a look at them. I'm not going to go through them all for obvious reasons. A lot of it is, okay, so they've made certain ammunition belts different, and therefore they've changed all of their different costs. So since they've changed the cost of that, therefore it changed the cost of all the other rank modifications around them, and that's what goes on. So it's a little bit annoying to go through them. So yeah, it's pretty much as simple as that. If you want to see a specific vehicle, I would honestly say it's worth having a look at what is going on. The only one which is kind of worth noting is the PR12412. Since they've moved it in the tech tree, they're actually reducing its RP cost. Instead of it being 320,000, it's going to be 250,000 RP, and then also it's going to be lower in SL2. So if you already have the vehicle at 250,000 RP in the coastal USSR tech tree, don't worry about it. It'll unlock itself in the next update, which is quite nice. So you don't have to put in extra research to it. Also, they changed a bunch of skin unlock requirements, basically making them either slightly easier or slightly harder, depending on the vehicle. But we're only talking about maybe 1 or 2 or maybe 6 or 7 player kill differences. So it's not going to make a huge difference. It's just slight rebalancing between them, mainly with the Ostwind, the Wirbelwind, the ZIS-43, the Fox, and also the M42 for China, the ZSD-63, and the PR12412. But to show you kind of like the difference between them and how most of them are, for example, the Ostwind Summer Camouflage, instead of having to destroy 26 players, you now have to destroy 24. So it's not making a huge difference. It'll mean you play a vehicle maybe like 1 more game or maybe 2 more games, and like that's it, depending on how well you do with it. They did add a bunch of new texts into the dev server. You have switch guidance method, which I'm kind of surprised wasn't already in. Replay system window, manual controlling, co-pilot hovering, which sounds really interesting, additional ammunition is out, and then fire flares, fire chaff, and switch countermeasures. If you didn't know, in this update, they're actually adding in a system where you can flip between which countermeasures you're using. So if you bring a mixture of chaff and flares, you can set a button to be able to pick which one you want to use. This obviously makes it easier to use countermeasures and easier to kind of push around the place, which is cool. You know, I think in general, giving people more options is always the way to go. There's also more X-ray text as well. This is for the specific like models that they're adding it to. So for example, the hydraulic pump, which is something going to the Leopards, and also the Abrams, which is getting a power electronic setup, the FCS, and also stuff like the power system, driver controls, autoloader electronic equipment, gun stabilizer, and guided weapons controls. It's going to be interesting to see how much that is going to be expanded, or if it's basically all there now when we have a look at the dev server, because it was really cool to see, and I kind of want to see if they're going to continue to expand on it, or if it's something that's going to happen over like a long period of time in the game. I feel like it's a set of mechanics which aren't going to actually affect a lot of BRs though. They're probably going to focus a lot on high tier stuff, since that's where a lot of the problems are, and then after that we'll have to see what goes on. There are also new menu text, so game mode settings. This is probably for the night battles and also the smaller player or smaller teams in air battles, so that will be good. Also participate in battles with smaller team sizes and so on and so forth. Also expand all and collapse all, which is coming to the tech trees, so you can collapse the whole tech tree instead of having to see it all. You don't have to use the scroll button. All of the UI changes they've done with that is really cool, and I'm super happy that they're bringing them in. It's kind of funny, like, sometimes when it comes to changes, you don't really think about them, right? Or you don't think they're going to have a huge impact, but the one where you're able to drag units from your lineup and into your lineup is ridiculously useful. And I've actually been playing the standard game before, obviously, the update comes out, doing the Churchill event and also the page of history, and it is a massive downgrade, and it's actually really hard to go back to it, and the way that the system works works. So yeah, it's just kind of surprising to see. Also, Brazil has been added as a menu text since the new AMX is coming in, which is of Brazilian origin, which is kind of cool. And it also means we have the Brazilian flag now, which is pretty awesome. Another nation represented in War Thunder, which is fantastic to see. Then, new mission text, Mysterious Valley and Bering Sea. These are the new air map and the new naval map. And then also mission objectives, capture and hold the airfield, capture and maintain the superiority over the air zone. So I feel like we've already got that, unless they're trying to mix some stuff up. And then Mysterious Valley and Spaceport has an operation now, which is the new style of operation that they've talked about. This is the one which has the more modern equipment in it, which we had a look at in one of the videos. So that should be pretty cool to see. There's also a new kill log text as well, which is base. So when you destroy a base, it will actually pop up in the bottom right that you have destroyed it. So that means people will know what has hit the bases and where to go to destroy the person who's hit the base. So there you go. They also added a bunch of damage feedback texts, and it's based around the new kind of X-ray modules. So FCADs and electronic equipment damage, stuff like that. So it'll tell you when things have been destroyed on the enemy. It'll be interesting to see how long that list is over time. They did say that they are actually in the roadmap going to fix, oh sorry, not fix, that's not right, update the damage setup. So when you actually hit a vehicle, they're going to change how all of that works. And I'm kind of looking forward to it. I think it actually should be really cool. There's also some new HUD text, so flare and chaff release mode, flare release mode, chaff release mode, obviously pertaining to what we talked about before. 9L, 7M, 120A, 9M, 9L, and 1500 KP, which is of course some of the new missiles and bombs that are coming in. And then also, we have some new vehicle texts, which are all of the new ones that you can kind of go around with. And also, the new AI unit texts are in as well. The one that we didn't have a look at, actually, because there's a few which sat around the place. You have the Kamaz 4310 and also the M939. So those seem like they're going to be new vehicles coming in too. Basically, the full list of AI units that are coming in are the 2A36 gun, long-range artillery, M198 howitzer, M270 MLRS, another MLRS, the BM21 MLRS, TPS-43 radar, P-37 radar, MGM-52 Lance, 9K-72, the Kamaz 4310, and the M939. So they're definitely making stuff way more historical in the modern era for specific maps, which is kind of cool. And they've obviously added a bunch of modification texts, mainly for the active radar homing missiles which are coming in, and also for stuff like the drop tanks and other weapons that are coming in too. They've removed a bunch of links from the game, which is kind of surprised. So the forum link and also the auto login to War Thunder Live. I'm kind of worried about that because sometimes I don't know how this is going to work, but there's a way of cheating vehicles into the game, and it's if they're available on the wiki, you can kind of search for them and you can kind of show them in the game itself. But they also have to be in the game file, so there's other ways of getting them in to show you guys, so it shouldn't really matter too much, but it is just something to kind of think about. They also added some new sensor text, the SPO-15L, the N001 VEP, and the COPIO-21. I believe the COPIO's on the MiG-21 Bison, and the N001 VEP is the Su-27 SM. I'm not sure about the SPO-15L, though. No idea what that is. They've also done a bunch of text changes and vehicle text changes, basically the name of them, but most of it is just, you know, making things a little bit more obvious. So for example, stuff like allows the installation of 500 kilo bombs is now allows the installation of 630 kilo bombs, which is quite funny, so they must have just kind of screwed that up. And also they've changed a bunch of weapon text changes, which all are basically just making them more realistic. So instead of KH-23M rockets, it's now KH-23M missiles, so the information isn't basically wrong. The Spike MR has also been changed to the Spike LR2, so they're changing its name, and also many other text changes for weapons that are already there. They have also changed the Botfly and Step Spider, which are two of the Depending on how you see it, harder challenges to do for specials, but some people have, specific ways of doing them. For example, for me, one of the ways I used to do it is I would run the ZIS 30, which is the little truck with the 57mm for the USSR, and then I would switch into my 4.3, now 4.7 Soviet lineup to be able to use those, and generally it worked pretty well. But basically they're changing it. So before, it was win required number of battles, destroying one enemy vehicle by at least 1 battle rating higher than yours in every battle. And now it's going to be win required number of battles in each of which you need to destroy at least one enemy vehicle of the same type as your vehicle, and whose battle rating is at least 1.0 higher than yours. So for some reason, I don't know whether I don't know how that qualifier is going to work. I'm guessing they put it in so you actually need a kill with that specific vehicle against another vehicle. But I'm worried that it basically means if you shoot the wrong targets, then you're not going to get it done. And that would suck because that challenge is already pretty tough. Hopefully it doesn't change too much, but we'll have to see. They also have changed the collection name on the Zodiac pinup. And that still isn't in the game, by the way. It's not something that is there yet, so we'll have to see when that actually gets added. My guess is it's worth, collecting the Zodiac pinups if you haven't, because obviously the collection's going to come soon. The only real way of getting the Zodiac pinups is actually through the Warbond shop. So if you want to get them, this would be the time to kind of sort them out. So that is something to also look at, and if you are a collector like me, I have all the collection stuff and I'm pretty happy with it, but if they decide to bring this in, I think I'm going to be kind of screwed. There's a lot of them that I missed over the years. Then we have new tech tree icons, which is for all of the new vehicles and also the groups that have been kind of pushed in too. So they're adding in new group icons for stuff like the MiG-23 and the MiG-27 and the Act-3U group, so that's kind of nice. But it shouldn't really make too much of a difference. And also at the same time, you have some new stat cards which are sat around, and also some new air missions on Ladoga and Vietnam, which unfortunately I couldn't get access to. So it would have been really nice to actually see those, but unfortunately they just weren't available. And that's one of the things I wish that they would start actually improving. So having the missions be available on the dev server to anybody who wants to have a look at them. Nowadays they actually did change custom battles, so it's a lot easier to look around stuff. You can make it so you don't need people on each of the teams, so you can basically use it as a way to kind of wander around. But if you still want access to the maps, you still have to create a user mission, and that doesn't even give you the full mission, that just gives you the area, or you have to try and go through the matchmaking of the dev server, which isn't exactly a great place to try and look and test and see what's going on. Then, so all of those data mines that we've gone through are for the first dev server, by the way. So just to show you how large of the changes that came to the dev server, that was all of them. It was insane of a hit dealing with that first dev server, but then we had subsequent dev servers. Technically, if you want to be, really technical about it, we are on the 5th dev server of this little series. So it is just kind of nuts. There wasn't huge changes between some of them, but the first change, which was from 0.16 to 0.18, was massive. Basically, they added a new vehicle, which was the F-47N25. This is the P-47 Premium that they're bringing in for China. Not a huge change there for something, just, another P-47, but then they started going a bit cuckoo again. So new shrapnel preset for the 170mm heat warhead, which of course is the one which is going to affect the Mavericks, or the Hellfires, sorry. Not the Mavericks, the Hellfires, and some of the other helicopter missiles. Compared to the regular ACGM preset, it has less shrapnel count from residual penetration, less shrapnel penetration from residual penetration, less damage from residual penetration, and larger shrapnel angles, larger shrapnel count, lower shrapnel penetration, and larger shrapnel damage. So yeah, kind of a mess. They also added the Canadian tank voice lines, which is really cool. So I'll make sure to make a video about those so they can set it up. And then also, there was a bunch of aircraft DM changes. The Sea Harrier FA Mark II, cannons weren't shown when equipped, and now that's been fixed. Don't know why you'd want to... Well, you might want to run like one cannon, because obviously it's nice having a gun, but the problem is they're on the same pylons as some of the missiles, so it's kind of annoying. Also, the MiG-21 Bison, the amount of countermeasures it's had, went from 120 to 60, so quite a large change. And then they made a ton of radar changes to a bunch of vehicles too. They also removed the Queen Mary, which was kind of odd, and reduced its belt armor by half. So it was 228.6 at the first primary turret. Instead, it's 127 millimeters now, which is kind of crazy. And the vehicle itself was just kind of disappeared from the dev server, and then the hood after it was also disappeared. It was super odd that they decided to do it. They also did all the XM800T changes that I covered in the extras videos, basically making it an actual vehicle. They improved the Leopard 2A4M Canadian thermals and brought them up to standard, which was quite nice, and then started tinkering with the T80 UE1, which is something that was, you know, pretty nice to see. Same with the CV9035DK. All of those vehicles, if you want to check out their changes, we talked about in the actual extras videos themselves. There wasn't really too much that was changed in this first dev server. I believe now, if you actually have a look on the dev server, which is available still for a few more days, by the way, I'm pretty sure they are at the standard they're going to be when they come to the game now. So don't think there's too much different going to be between the live server and the dev server for those vehicles. There was also some new menu text, so XP points, level, and also for crew training, it's necessary to set the technique in the slot. This is all for the UI at the bottom of the screen. We talked about it in the extras videos once again. They made some HUD text for IOG and DL2, which is cool to see. And also the R2875 and the Pegasus Mark 106 got their model text for their engines too, which is kind of cool. I'm guessing the Pegasus is on the new Harrier. I'm not entirely sure what that is. But also there was some new weapon texts, which are the 20mm M139 cannon and the 35mm APDS FS, which is of course for the CV9035DK. It finally got its APFSDS round in this setup. And then also some shell text changes as well, just bopping in. So that was like the first update, oh sorry, technically the second update of the dev server. Then you had another one, which happened like the next day, where they added the Cool Bar and also the VLT2, which are two naval vehicles that we've already talked about. We haven't heard anything about naval CBT Coastal for France yet, have we? That just kind of hasn't happened. So that's kind of odd. I wonder if that'll ever turn up. Then also the heavy heat warhead, the 170mm heat warhead shrapnel presets. The shrapnel count from residual penetration has been increased, so overall they should be able to do more damage. It'll be interesting to see how they are compared to the previous ones though, since that's obviously all around. They removed the optic on the A1A, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on with that. And then also the F4F, the ICE KWS-LV. They added CCIP for guns, bombs, and rockets, so if you want to, at least you can use it as a bomb truck like everybody else does with all the other Phantoms in the game. They also changed its RWR to the NALR 86V3, so it should be a lot more powerful than it was. And for the F-16 AM-15, they added the HMD, the targeting pod, the laser designator sensor, and also the Carapace RWR. So that one actually has become more of an actual vehicle instead of what it was previously, which was kind of a copy and paste. The F-16 C-50, the HMD, is also now enabled by default, which is kind of cool. And they added all of the Meteor F Mark 8s and the Hunters. They got their ejection seat, which is kind of cool. And the Sea Harrier got its EEGS and also the MFD changes in the cockpit, which is quite nice. Same with the H1Z, which also ended up with that. The tracker sensor for the Z9WA as well is now IR instead of TV. Not entirely sure how that's going to change it, but we'll have to see. They also started adding all of the drop tanks that were sat in the files on a bunch of these vehicles, so nothing too crazy there. And what's really nice is they have decided to actually make a lot of those drop tanks kind of stock, so you won't have to grind them out. Can you imagine being on maps and like you just run out of fuel because you haven't been able to research your drop tank yet? That would absolutely suck. So I'm very glad that they fixed that. They also changed a bunch of smoke grenade 3D models, which is kind of interesting. A lot of vehicles got affected by this, such as the Macarva, the Abrams, and also stuff like the Magax. So check out that when that comes in. And more changes came to the vehicles that they said weren't finished. Basically the TADUE-1, the XM800T, and also the Leopard 2A4M can. They made them a lot better than they were previously. The ZSL92 also got an increase in horsepower, so it is able to move around the place, and also a much faster targeting speed and a much faster vehicle. Same with the Vextra. It got massively buffed on this dev server too, and same with the CV9035DK. So a lot of changes which have been very, very positive. They moved the MiG-21 Bison to 11.7, so now it's in a much better position than 12.0, and then the Vextra TML got moved from 8.7 to 9.7, which is just kind of nuts. The CV9035DK also changed in price. It was a 9,270G premium, which is pretty pricey, let's be honest, for what it is. But remember, you do have the 50% sales, which happen a lot over the last... Well, they happen at least like 3 times a year. I think that's safe to say. They also increased the RP cost of the Vextra, which isn't great, but once again, since it went up to 9.7, shouldn't really be too surprising. They added a bunch of weapon techs too, which were the drop tanks, and then also the OFL 105F2, which is the Vextra's gun. The 35mm Bushmaster 3, which is the CV9035s, the 125mm 2A46M4, which is the TADUE-1s, and then the 19V and the 1990V Torpedo, which is on the VLT2, so not really a huge surprise. They changed a few also vehicle texts which are around there, and the premium account perks text changes. So before, it was compensation of expenses for automatic repair of vehicles and automatic purchase of ammo and crew replenishment in case of negative battle results up to 0 results of Silver Lions. So basically, if you don't make any SL in a game, it won't charge you anything. Now, it's called insurance. Compensation of expenses for automatic repair of vehicles and automatic purchase of ammo and crew replenishment in case of negative battle results up to 0 results of Silver Lions. So it's literally called insurance in the game, which I think is quite funny. So there you go. We now have War Thunder insurance. You need to get your quotes in, and yeah, you got to pay your premiums each year. I mean, literally. That's quite funny. Then there was another update to the dev server, and this is more akin to what we've seen over the last few days. And the first thing that they ended up doing is changing the shrapnel preset changes again for Heat FS 80 Gems Heavy Heat Warhead, 170mm Heat Warhead, where the largest shrapnel ranged increased from 1.6 times to 3 times, which is quite a large change. Also, the minimum caliber proximity fuse for damage to be shown on an aircraft is now 29mm instead of 55, so you'll be able to see more stuff. They also removed all images related to Pixel Storm. I can't remember if that was a collaboration or if that was something else. I remember that Pixel Storm was a game developer and there was something to do with them and Gaijin. I just can't remember what it was. It was something that turned up a little bit ago. Then you have some aircraft damage model changes. Basically, the F4F got a new sight, or at least defined zoom levels of 11.34 times to 49.11, which is quite crazy. The HMD was changed on all the Gripens, and also the J11 cockpit MFD was changed along with the Mi-28 MM12 and also the HMD block area was removed for all of the Tiger helicopters. So a lot of MFD changes for a lot of vehicles over the time. Also, the F4F KWSLV got access to the AGM-65Ds and Gs, and also the AIM-9L1s. I believe it's 1 and not I. Basically, this is an AIM-9L, which has access to an IRCCM. So it doesn't have the smokeless motor, which is what the AIM-9M is. Instead, it has the smoked motor and then also the IRCCM. So yeah, it's very powerful and will work very well. Then also, you have some slot changes changed based on that for the F4F, and a few changes for the F-15s, where they added a loadout of 8 AIM-120s to them, if you really want to bring that along. And also, they changed the J-11A loadouts, where large countermeasures is now just countermeasures, so technically won't be as strong against stuff like IRCCMs. They also changed the Copio 21, they added the HMD lock to it, and changed its elevation limits, basically increasing them quite a lot from 10 degrees to 40, so that is pretty crazy. They also changed the naval stuff, so for example the Coolbar got kind of reconfigured, so did the Queen Mary, and also the Guichin, or the Guichin, got reconfigured, not in huge ways, but will make slight differences, and then they actually made the VLT2 what it should be. The only issue with it is it's a lot heavier than it was before. So for example, its empty mass went from 34 to 60 tons. So this boy got chunky. So we'll have to see how that affects it. They also made the targeting speed of the XM800T insanely big. And then they finally fixed the Leopard 2A4M Canadian armor, so that is sorted now, or at least a lot better than it was before. Before, it was incredibly weak, and basically just like a 2A4, but now they've actually moved around a lot of different parts of it. So for example, changed KE and chemical modifiers, and also changed a bunch of the armor. So now it's actually more representative of what it should be. They also changed other stuff like the Desert Warrior, where the ATGM now needs to be deployed. So the max speed to deploy it is 25 kilometers an hour. So, you know, if you're going at 40, you're not going to be able to deploy it, which kind of sucks. And also, they made it so you can't overpressure the Churchill Mark III Avery through the loaded ammo. So basically, the ammo which is sat in the cannon. Now also remember, that will probably change, because that's one of the only ways to kill it for a lot of vehicles, and that would be a little bit rough. For the T69-2G, the Huama 301, ZLT-11, the ZTZ-59D1, and the ZTZ-88A, so a lot of the vehicles between 80 and 90 for China, they added an SAPC-BC round, so we'll have to see how that changes it. They also added shell ejection for the CV9035DK, and also for the Namer, the spall shield between the engine and the turret crew has gone from 400mm of NERA to 0.1mm of RHA. So basically, your rounds will not get stuck on the engine anymore. They also removed all of the other internal armor on the Namer, which kind of says to me that it isn't finished yet, and they're removing all of the previous stuff, and they're going to add in a bunch of new armor, because there's no way that vehicle runs around with absolutely no armor in it, especially if it's still 60 tons, which is completely crazy at the end of it. Also, they changed a bunch of missiles, mainly the active radar homing ones. They added a distant gate data to them, so I'm not entirely sure what that means. And also, they added it to the M120C5 and a few other ones that are around too. They also added a new feature, which is separate countermeasures, which is locked to the devs for now, but they did say it will be coming pretty soon, so that's something I would look forward to. And then of course they changed the F4F KWS's modifications because they added the new missiles to it. The F-15J2, since the F-15JM, which is the new F-15 coming in for Japan, that one got access to AIM-120s, so that changed all the modifications around that too. And also the J-11A got a more, so we're going to have to see how that actually affects it. The Su-27SM also got the R-27Ts and Rs, so added modifications for that too. And also the ZT-Z59D1 getting the BTM1 SAPC BC modification. So that is annoying as all hell, because you're going to have to respade all those vehicles as you go around. They also added a new HUD text, which is P3, and all the new modification texts, which have come in too. They also added in some of the names as well, so sorting out stuff like the F-15C BAS, for example. Now it's known as the BAS Mesofar, which, or well, the new F-15, I should say, for Israel is. So that'll at least be easy to identify compared to the other F-15s if it ever comes to it. Then there was a last update on top of that as well, where they changed a bunch of stuff, which, as I said, just shows you how nuts all of these different parts were. They changed the shooting tanks in the hangar, so they just moved them around a little bit and moved which was there. And same with the flying planes as well, so you'll hear different things which are going around. The premium aircraft in the hangar also are better at, and also the naval are coming around. And they're basically removing all the vehicles from that, which you can't buy anymore. So, for example, you know, the Eugenie and things like that, you're not going to be able to see. They also changed the targeting pod zoom on the A1A. It now has 49.11 times on its extended instead of 23. So that'll work very well. And same with the AVA-B Plus and all the Gripens. So they're getting their crazy targeting pods too. Which all extend to 49.11 times, so you'll be able to hit stuff from miles away. The F-16s are also getting the same thing, same with the Tornadoes. Everybody's getting really, really powerful sight zooms and targeting pod zooms for all of their weaponry. So good luck, Godspeed, they'll be able to hit you from space. The T129, they also added the HMD to that, and also the cockpit FMD changes, which they've done for a lot of vehicles. And then they also added the drop tanks for the Mirage F1, which is really cool, and increased the amount of countermeasures that the Su-27 has to 126 instead of 96, so improving it as well. They also changed the sensors on the NAPG-63V1, which is the F4F ICES RWR, basically making it more powerful. And then also the N001 and the VEP they changed too. We'll have to see how that kind of works. They then once again changed the XM800T, but they made it faster this time, and also they added more armor to the Leopard 2A4M. And for the Panzer, they added some armor to that, plus the Churchill Avery and the T80UE1. So I think after 0.24, it is fair to say probably all of these vehicles, their armor is sorted, right? It's one of those things which would be very surprising. Also, the CV90-35DK, all of its armor also got changed. It's now Mexus 2 armor on most of it. So instead of 20mm of composites, it's now 25 of Mexus 2. So it'll be a little bit better. And also they changed the explosive mass of the, the thing that the Avery fires to 10.43 kilos of explosive, with basically the same penetration, so it shouldn't really make a difference. They also changed all of the active radar homing missiles in this update, which is why it is super important to not get caught up in these things until they are actually released in the game, because they massively changed them to an aggressive degree. So just to kind of give you an idea, for the AIM-120A and 120B, the loft elevation went from 25 to 7.5, the loft target elevation went from -15 to -5, the loft max target omega went from 0.75 to 0.5, and the proportional term for the PID dropped by 0.00, I think 15 or 25, and then also the integral term was changed by 0.002, and the derivative term was also changed by changing it to 0.00015, and also range tables were reworked for it too. This happened to all of the new missiles that are coming in, so don't be surprised that what you've seen on the dev server doesn't actually accurately show what is there. There's also a loading screen for the F4F now, and don't worry, I'll cover it for you. It should be quite nice to see. I'm going to do a video which kind of shows a lot of these things too. just because I think it's important to do so. And also some new stat cards came in for the Tornad and the Kuba, which is kind of cool. And also they added the Mysterious Valley Airspawns map, which is once again the more modern version with all of these new vehicles in. So you can see from the data mines, there's a metric ton of information and so many things going on. It's incredibly hard to keep on top of, and I've just got to say thank you to Ashida, thank you to Javi, thank you to all of the guys who are behind this. They've done stellar work with this update, and it has been fantastic to go through and work out what's going on. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.